March 21st, 2006. A quiet Tuesday in rural New Hampshire. But behind the gates of a secluded horse farm, something unthinkable was happening. By nightfall, a young man was gone. His body never recovered. The only clues? A trail of blood, a missing person report, and a woman with a past darker than anyone imagined. She said he left willingly. She even called the police herself. But what investigators would uncover inside that farmhouse would launch one of the most chilling cases the state had ever seen. What really happened to Kenneth County? And how many others had crossed her path, only to vanish without a trace? This is the story of manipulation, madness, and murder. But it didn't start here, and it wouldn't end here. Born on July 4, 1958 in Fort Payne, Alabama, Sheila K. Bailey came from what appeared to be a humble Baptist upbringing. She was one of 6 children raised by Ruby and Manuel Bailey. Her father worked for the State Highway Department as a machine operator, while her mother cleaned homes to help support the family. But behind the image of a religious, hardworking man, Manuel harbored a violent temper that poisoned the household. Weekends were particularly volatile. Fueled by alcohol, Manuel's rage often boiled over into terrifying outbursts. In one particularly disturbing incident, he overturned the family's cast iron heater and hurled food at his wife and children. When they attempted to flee in the car, he smashed a window with such force that he lost his balance, giving his family enough time to escape. But not before a can of antifreeze struck 6-year-old Sheila in the hand, leaving a scar that would never fade. That night, they hid in a cornfield until he gave up his pursuit. Then, they walked 6 miles in darkness to reach safety. The trauma didn't end there. Years later, Sheila would disclose that both she and her sister were victims of sexual abuse by their father. Sheila tried to leave her childhood pain behind. She graduated high school and blossomed into a beautiful young woman with dreams of becoming a country singer or model. Hungry for attention and determined to shine, she began entering beauty pageants. She was charming, striking, and knew how to command a room. But there was also a darker side, controlling, demanding, and volatile. In late 1980, she met John Baxter, a 19-year-old single father. Although he was 4 years her junior, the two married within a month of meeting on New Year's Eve, 1981. The union quickly disintegrated. Sheila resented playing the role of a stepmother, especially when it meant putting her own ambitions on hold. Her frustration turned into cruelty. John came home one day to find his young daughter locked in a closet-like room, using a bucket as a toilet. The girl had been beaten and terrorized into silence. John immediately expelled Sheila from the home. The marriage lasted just 6 weeks. Sheila then took a job at a fast food restaurant where she met Ronnie Jennings. Tall, attractive, and non-committal, Ronnie wasn't looking for anything serious, but Sheila was. Despite his reluctance, she eventually convinced him to marry her after her divorce from John was finalized. The couple moved to Chattanooga, Tennessee, where the honeymoon phase evaporated quickly. Sheila's violent mood swings and threats left Ronnie in constant fear. He once confessed that he worried she would kill him in his sleep with a pair of scissors. As their relationship deteriorated, Sheila began an affair with Sam Williams, the married vice president of the company she worked for. When Sam's father discovered the affair, he forced his son to end it and fired Sheila. Devastated by the loss of both job and lover, she attempted suicide by overdosing on pills, landing her in a week-long coma. Upon waking, she was institutionalized and later alleged she had been sexually assaulted by a staff member. After 30 days, she was released, claiming perfect mental health. Her husband disagreed. They soon divorced. By 1987, Sheila spotted a new opportunity: a personal ad from a 60-year-old widower named Wilfred "Bill" LaBarre. A wealthy chiropractor from New Hampshire, Wilfred owned a sprawling horse farm and a clinic in the coastal town of Hampton. Sheila sent him a photo of herself in a pink bikini and quickly won him over. Though they never officially married, she took his last name and moved into his home. She became the office manager at his clinic and impressed him with her ability to collect on unpaid bills. Enamored, Wilfred even supported her dream of becoming a country music star by taking her to Nashville, but nothing came of it. What did emerge were frequent police calls to their home due to her violent behavior. Wilfred, once full of life, became withdrawn and anxious, a change that his daughter found deeply troubling. Eventually they separated, but Wilfred allowed her to live in an apartment above his clinic. In late 1994, Sheila met Wayne Ennis, a Jamaican migrant worker recovering from a car accident. He visited the clinic for treatment, and Sheila, drawn to his looks, quickly initiated a romance. By August 1995, they were married. Yet even as a wife, Sheila maintained an intimate bond with Wilfred. Things with Wayne turned dark. Sheila accused him of trying to run her off the road, punching her in the head and kicking her. Despite these allegations, she continued communicating with him, even asking him to kill Wilfred so she could inherit his property and business. Wilfred's daughter somehow learned of the plot and took legal action, obtaining a restraining order to keep Sheila away from her father for a year. Undeterred, Sheila moved on and began a new relationship with James "Jimmy" Brackett, a shy man in his 20s with learning difficulties. She manipulated her way into his life, and he moved into her apartment in Hampton. Wilfred, ever generous, allowed Jimmy to live on his property as well, but this relationship, too, devolved into chaos. In 1998, after a violent altercation involving scissors, Jimmy filed charges for second-degree assault. The case, however, was dismissed as a lover's quarrel. Then came a shocking turn in 2000. Wilfred died suddenly. Sheila inherited everything: his clinic, his 2 properties, and his prized horse farm, valued at nearly $2 million. His daughter was stunned and suspected foul play. She believed her father had been manipulated, threatened, and possibly poisoned. Yet the death certificate cited heart failure as the cause. While Laura, Wilfred's daughter, pleaded for anyone, to reopen the investigation into her father's death, Sheila took swift control of the aftermath. She arranged for Wilfred's body to be cremated, scattered the ashes across the horse farm, and eliminated any possibility of a second autopsy. For Laura, who had already lost her father, and now any chance of proving foul play, the pain was immeasurable. Sheila, meanwhile, moved into the sprawling estate and resumed life as though nothing had happened. She was often seen speeding down New Hampshire roads in her silver Mercedes-Benz, her perfectly dyed blonde hair blowing in the wind. Outwardly, life looked polished, but behind the scenes, Sheila was spiraling. She had started carrying weapons, using them to intimidate those around her. Her behavior became increasingly erratic and aggressive, and her reputation in town grew darker by the day. Despite this, she never abandoned her old manipulative charm. Around this time, Sheila began flooding the local police department with complaints, over 100 calls in total, about imaginary noise disturbances, fictitious domestic violence, and petty neighborhood grievances. Many believed she had an ulterior motive, luring attractive police officers to her home for her amusement. The accusations weren't baseless. Officers filed reports describing visits to her residence where Sheila greeted them in various states of undress or made inappropriate advances. Over time, her antics made her a pariah among the local force, someone officers actively avoided. She also seemed obsessed with tormenting one particular man, Jimmy Brackett, her former partner. In 2002, she reportedly attempted to run him over. A year later, she pointed a gun at him and pulled the trigger. Miraculously, she missed. Still, Jimmy never pressed charges. Sheila also had a disturbing habit of hiring young, vulnerable men under the guise of employment, only to seduce them and dominate them physically and emotionally. Many of them left the property injured, sometimes even bleeding. Rumors circulated that a few of these men simply disappeared, but no evidence ever emerged to confirm foul play. What did surface, however, were hundreds of hours of audio recordings. In them, Sheila could be heard berating and interrogating her victims, sometimes speaking to herself in chilling monologues. Her instability had become undeniable. In 2004, Sheila made a move on a male neighbor, inviting him over for drinks and sex. When he declined, she followed him into the woods, twice, armed with a rifle. He survived, but was left traumatized. Seeking her next victim, Sheila began frequenting homeless shelters, targeting desperate men she could easily control. Her first recruit was 38-year-old Michael Deloge, whom she met in a New Hampshire shelter. Michael had once dreamed of being a songwriter and regularly recited lyrics at clubs in New Haven and New York. But after a failed marriage and losing custody of his son, he turned to drugs and alcohol, eventually landing on the streets. Sheila offered him a place to stay in exchange for work on the farm. Soon, as with others before him, their relationship became sexual. Michael, grateful and naive, called his family to boast about his wealthy new girlfriend, a landowner who took care of him. To Sheila's advantage, Michael's parents were charmed but skeptical. They didn't know the full story. Michael and Sheila spent their days using drugs and watching explicit films. She soon isolated him from his family, punishing even the smallest gestures of affection toward his mother. Despite the tension, Michael joined Sheila at his parents' home for Christmas in 2004. She hijacked the holiday with solo performances and sulking. A few weeks later, Donna was hospitalized and, for the first time, couldn't reach her son. She feared, rightly, that Sheila was behind the silence. Back on the farm, Michael was deteriorating, physically and emotionally. He was beaten, humiliated, and confined. Witnesses later testified to horrifying scenes. Michael being struck with a wooden rod, hiding in a windowless room, trembling with fear, and obeying Sheila without question. In one chilling episode, Sheila forced a false confession from Michael, accusing him of damaging a carriage. After hours of pressure and abuse, he admitted to the act just to make it stop. Then she beat him unconscious. In July 2005, Sheila brought Michael to visit his mother. Donna immediately saw the change. Her son was gaunt, nervous, and broken. When she asked what was wrong, Michael hesitated, then accused her, at Sheila's command, of abusing him in childhood. Donna knew immediately the words weren't his. Not long after, Sheila forced Michael to write a letter confessing to being a child abuser. Then, he vanished. Weeks later, Austin Wiggin returned to the farm looking for work. Noticing Michael's absence, he asked Sheila where he was. Her reaction was furious. She accused Austin of imagining crimes, then calmed herself and claimed Michael had left because even his family wanted nothing to do with him. Austin didn't believe her and never came back. Meanwhile, Donna was frantic. Months passed with no word from Michael. The emotional strain grew unbearable. While Donna grieved, Sheila moved on, calm, calculating, and once again hunting for her next victim. In early 2006, she joined a phone service that matched lonely women with men looking for companionship. That's how she met Kenneth Michael County. Kenneth was born on July 18, 1981 in Massachusetts. Diagnosed with autism as a child, he found solace in sports, especially baseball and hockey, supported by his father, a school coach. Fascinated by war movies, Kenneth dreamed of becoming a hero himself, and joining the military seemed like the perfect path. He would soon find himself crossing paths with a woman who had left behind a trail of broken men and may have been hiding even darker secrets. From the beginning, Caroline County feared the world would hurt her son. Kenneth, with his kind heart and gentle nature, was vulnerable. She pleaded with him to stay home, but he had already made up his mind. Just after graduating high school, he enlisted in the military and began basic training at Fort Benning, Georgia. But Kenneth struggled with the physical demands, specifically the abdominal exercises, and was discharged for medical reasons. Defeated but determined, he returned to Massachusetts and took a job at a local car wash, quickly earning the respect of coworkers and supervisors. By late 2005, at age 24, Kenneth decided to try living on his own. He moved to Wilmington, Vermont, sharing a house with another young man who described him as kind but naive. Kenneth's mother stayed in close touch, visiting him at work and calling daily. Yet beneath his cheerful exterior, Kenneth was lonely and aching for affection. One night in early 2006, during a bout of insomnia and depression, Kenneth saw an ad on TV for a hotline that connected lonely callers with affectionate women. He dialed the number, and Sheila answered. Their exchange was flirtatious, provocative, and by the end of that first conversation, a connection was made. On Valentine's Day, they met at a beachside hotel. For Kenneth, it was a dream come true. A wealthy, confident, beautiful woman who made him feel important. Within 4 days, he left his home without warning and moved in with Sheila. She offered him a new life, a job, a future, even a new name. But it didn't take long before Kenneth's family became concerned. The police received 2 alarming calls from Kenneth's relatives. They believed he was being held against his will by an older woman named Sheila. After confirming that Kenneth was listed as a missing person, the police visited Sheila's heavily fenced property. Initially, she denied knowing Kenneth, but eventually brought him to the door. He looked frail, but claimed he was there by choice. Sheila quickly ordered the officers off her land. 2 days later, Sheila called the police repeatedly, threatening legal action for what she described as an unlawful intrusion. She demanded a copy of the missing person report. In the days that followed, she manipulated Kenneth into signing over power of attorney, granting her control over his mail, finances, and legal representation. She even recorded a coerced confession from him, falsely admitting to crimes he never committed. On March 17, 2006, police were called to a supermarket to respond to a disturbance. There, they found Sheila and Kenneth. He was slumped in a wheelchair, pale, with facial cuts and swollen hands. When the police tried to speak with him, Sheila silenced Kenneth with a single glance. She claimed he had been in a car accident. Police escorted them from the store, noting that Kenneth could barely walk. Sheila had to help him into her vehicle. 4 days later, on March 21, 2006, Sheila murdered Kenneth using poison and a knife. She then dismembered and incinerated his body. The next day, she called the police, enraged about being considered a suspect in the supermarket incident. Calmly, she told them Kenneth no longer lived with her. On March 23rd, Kenneth's mother Caroline called the police again. When she was told her son had returned to Massachusetts, her despair deepened. That night, Sheila phoned the police again, this time to play the disturbing recording of Kenneth's false confession. The call was unsettling enough that officers were dispatched to the farm, but Sheila gave them nothing. Still suspicious, authorities returned on March 26th with 3 search warrants. Over several days, investigators uncovered chilling evidence: bloodstains in the kitchen, living room, bathrooms, and bathtub. Some were so old they were covered in dust. Bones and teeth, likely human, were discovered. So were burned burial sites. Despite these findings, Sheila was not immediately arrested. Instead, officers were assigned to watch her. She managed to slip away. Disguised with bright red hair, she carried $85,000 in cash and checks, certain her charm would keep her safe. She convinced strangers to drive her, unaware they were helping a killer evade justice. By the time a warrant was issued on March 31st, she had fled. But 48 hours later, Sheila was found with $33,000 in cash, a $50,000 check, and a stash of cannabis. On April 3, 2006, she was charged in Massachusetts as a fugitive and for drug possession. She didn't fight extradition and was sent to New Hampshire to face a far more serious charge: first-degree murder. In court, Sheila showed no remorse. As Kenneth's family held up a large photo of him, she sat emotionless beside her attorney. To the media, she insisted she was innocent and accused the police of orchestrating a conspiracy. Meanwhile, the judge issued an order freezing Sheila's assets and nullifying her claim to Wilfred's estate. Laura, Wilfred's daughter, challenged the will, arguing that Sheila had manipulated her father into signing over everything. Investigators kept searching the property, convinced that Kenneth wasn't the only victim. Many of the blood samples didn't match Kenneth's DNA, and attention turned to another missing man, Michael Deloge. Soon after, authorities pumped the property's septic tank. Beneath the sewage and melting snow, they found a bullet, fragments of a cell phone, a bone, and Michael's birth certificate. They also recovered a handwritten letter, Michael's supposed confession, and a note listing his mother's contact information. Donna had gone nearly a year without hearing from her son. When she was contacted by detectives, it brought a painful confirmation that Michael had met a tragic end. In October 2007, Sheila was declared indigent, meaning the state would pay for her defense. Her trial was scheduled for March 2008, but a month before it began, her legal team made a startling announcement. Sheila confessed to killing both Kenneth and Michael. She claimed divine inspiration, saying God had appointed her as an avenging angel to punish abusers. Until then, she had not been formally charged with Michael's death. The confession horrified the victims' families. While prosecutors planned for a life sentence, many feared she might manipulate her way into a psychiatric facility and eventually secure her release. Before the trial began, investigators revealed they had discovered severed fingers on the property, none of which belonged to Kenneth or Michael. The evidence was withheld from the current case, but hinted at more victims. The trial began in May 2008. Sheila's defense argued she suffered from delusions, believing she was on a holy mission. They claimed she imagined neighbors were plotting against her and that she was haunted by ghosts. The prosecution painted her as manipulative, dangerous, and pathologically cruel. Her false abuse accusations were weapons used to control and isolate. More than 40 witnesses testified, including ex-partners James "Jimmy" Brackett and Wayne Innes, and Wilfred's daughter Laura. After 5 weeks of testimony, the jury deliberated for 2 days. On June 20, 2008, they returned with a unanimous verdict: guilty. Sheila collapsed into her attorney's arms, declaring, "Thank God they found me sane." Sheila was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for the murders of Kenneth County and Michael Deloge. As families wept and embraced, justice had finally been served. Though no other remains were ever recovered, investigators remain convinced there may have been more victims. Sheila appealed in 2010, but her motion was denied. Today, she serves her sentence at the Homestead Correctional Institution in Florida. Her legacy remains one of chilling manipulation, relentless cruelty, and a dark charisma that masked the soul of a predator. Thanks for tuning in to Unreal True Crime. If you're intrigued by mysteries from around the world, check out our new channel, Latin Crimes, where we dive into the gripping true crime stories of Latin America. Don't miss out. Subscribe now for more thrilling investigations.